Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Tracy Jones. Welcome to the Tremendous Leadership Podcast, Leaders on Leadership. Our guest today is Alec Stern. Alec is an entrepreneur, a speaker, a mentor, and an investor, and he has been a co-founder or founding team member of 8 startups, 5 exits, 2 IPOs, and 3 acquisitions, and one of those was as co-founder and original top 3 member of Constant Contact, where he worked with it for 18 years and then went through an IPO where he sold it at a valuation of $1.1 billion. So you're going to love hearing what Alex has to say on what it took him to pay the price of leadership.
You're listening to Tremendous Leadership with Dr. Tracy Jones.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Tracy Jones. Welcome to the Tremendous Leadership Podcast, Leaders on Leadership, where we pull back the curtain on leadership. And today, I am tremendously excited to welcome our guest, the one, the only Alec Stern. And Alec is an entrepreneur, a speaker, a mentor, and an investor. He has become known as America's Startup Success Expert for performing hundreds of keynotes in front of audiences worldwide, for his active breakout sessions, and as a 2-time Visionary Award winner at top conferences. Alec is also the co-founder and a founding team member of 8 startups, with 5 exits, 2 IPOs, and 3 acquisitions, all right? He was the primary member of Constant Contacts. I'm sure you've all heard of that founding team. And Alec was one of the original 3 who started the company in an attic. Alec was with the company for 18 years, from startup to IPO to a $1.1 billion acquisition. Alec, we are just so excited to have you on the Leadership Podcast today.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. And just, I know we hear all of these success, all these things. I can't wait to hear about all the joyful successes and triumphs. But today we're really also talking about the price you had to pay to make all those things happen. And my father wrote a little booklet. One of his speeches was called The Price of Leadership. And in it, he listed leadership as one of the most joyful things and also one of the toughest things you're going to have to do. You know, anything worthwhile is going to be difficult. But the first price that he mentioned was loneliness. And we've all heard that phrase, it's lonely at the top. But based on where you are and reflecting back on your journey as a leader, can you share with our leaders listening about what loneliness means to you as a leader, what it shouldn't mean, and maybe reflect on some times that you dealt with it in your career and how you would encourage others if they are in that season of loneliness?
Sure. Yeah, that's an interesting topic. So I say the first thing is, and I've always lived by this, and anything that I've been involved with, I make sure that we're sort of all on the same page. That
Okay.
One, to be title agnostic, right? And so it doesn't matter what your title is. Leaders don't need a title. If you're a leader, you'll lead regardless of what you're called. And some people get really hung up on I need this title, and I don't want anyone above me, or any other than one level of the CEO and all this other stuff, which really is just not it. It just, I don't find a place in business with that. So that being said, you're starting a business, right? 3 in an attic. I wore a lot of hats. And then as we were evolving, I had to peel off things and give them to somebody else to run them. I was, stay in your lane, right? That's the other thing. Like, my lane, go to market and channels and scale. And yet I was overseeing, at times other areas, sales, marketing, et cetera, everything but finance and tech. And so it became lonely when you were peeling off, like it's sort of letting your, sort of the baby go like off to college or what, like I had to give up certain areas. Which meant also people that were working for me were going to go off to someone else. And I knew it was the right thing to do. But it's that push pull, like bring in a CMO and have the marketing team go and let them really take it to the next level. Cause that wasn't my lane. And so it became moments of loneliness happened a lot as I would pass things off or for the company to really grow. Those are the sacrifices that I had to make. And so it's not like sitting in the like the ivory tower, C-suite office, sitting there being lonely, because I'm a man of the people. So I was always, rolling up my sleeves and working close with everyone. So it was hard. It was hard when I didn't have the reasons, or they didn't have the reasons necessarily to come into my office except to say hi and check in, versus come in, from a direct report perspective. So that's happened several times in my career, and there was and creating opportunity. I guess the last thing I would say, creating opportunity would mean that I would give up some of these things to go start something new, build it up, bring some people on, and eventually give it up to someone else to run it. So I had a cycle of loneliness occurring on, every couple of years with creating these new pockets of opportunity. And as they've built up with some success, flip them for somebody else to sort of take them and run. And this has been through many of the businesses I've been involved in. So I feel like it's loneliness, but it's also growth. And so it's a cost of growth, in the examples I've used. Yeah.
I love that. And I love how you did tie that to it. It is the cycle of growth. And I think, you as an entrepreneur, and we probably have a lot of entrepreneurs listening. Do you think that is kind of what is the market difference between an entrepreneurial leadership mindset versus somebody that's more the corporate type? I've worked in both worlds, and I know you said that you don't need a title, but I even know sometimes, entrepreneurs get hung up on, I got to be free to be me kind of thing. So you bring up this cool tension between, you're still creating, but you're all integrated, and you need to do like a relay. You got to do this handoff at different times kind of thing. But what's your sense of that with the entrepreneurial mindset? Do you think you've got to pretty much be constantly saying goodbye to certain things and hello to the next?
Well, so from the entrepreneurial mindset, and if you're building a startup, and you want to accelerate growth, you're going to go get money. You're going to raise money, and odds are, if it's a big idea, it's going to be big money, and that's venture capital. And so oftentimes, when you bring in external money, they want adult supervision. Right. So they're going to bring in someone to be in the business, to either run it as CEO or president or COO or some title. They're obviously going to be part of the team from the board perspective. So right out of the gate, there's changes are going to occur. And I say adult supervision, not in an age perspective.
No,
but
I
just
understand.
Someone who's seasoned,
right?
That can come in, who's been there and done that, and can come in and have a better, looking for a better chance of a successful outcome by bringing in some other leadership. And so I think there's that point. The second thing I would say is that, if you have a corporate mindset, I'd say, what you're going to expect. You're going to go in and you're going to do a job and have your area of responsibility and focus on your skills. When you're an entrepreneur, you're wearing all the hats. And eventually, as I mentioned, earlier, like, you're going to pick your lane and you got to stay in that lane.
Okay.
So when I meet startups and I meet new ventures, some of the red flags for me, if there's one founder, if you will, then they can't do it all. And if they're going to be doing stuff that's out of their lane, they're going to spend a lot of time learning it and then doing it and not focusing on what they're good at, and what they're best at. The second scenario is like maybe there are three co-founders and they're co-CEOs, who ultimately, at the end of the day, is going to be responsible? Like, who will ultimately be that CEO and have that title? Like, we all. And so they can't decide of the three who's going to run the business. So both of those are set up for sort of failure. And I think I bring those points up because from the entrepreneurial mindset, we need to be, scrappy. You've got to be prepared to do it all. But you also have to look at the cost of doing it all. And so it's very costly if you don't stay in your lane, the amount of time you're going to spend trying to do something else. And so think about your time value of money. I always look at everything and say, okay, if I'm worth $100 an hour, and I spend 6 to 8 hours over here, so I'm going to spend $600 to $800 of my time to do something. Can I bring in a virtual assistant, an intern, a low-level employee, or someone to do those, a contract person, while I can spend $600 to $800 of my time in my lane, which will ultimately drive to something, finishing off the product, or making a big sale, or finding a right partnership, or whatever it may be. And I think you have to be really flexible, in the startup scenario, because you will be called on to do a lot more than you would if you were just kind of a corporate mindset of taking a job. Yeah.
Absolutely. And let me ask you also too, back on the loneliness, how did you get the sense that it was time to send the kids away to college and say, job well done, baby. I birthed you, I raised you. How did you get that sense, or how did you know that?
Well, I think, I think it's really, I think that those are just decisions that need to be made, sometimes out of your control, if you will. Like,
Okay.
so for example, if there's no money coming in, or you didn't get any investment, or you haven't made enough sales to then potentially be able to afford hiring a CMO, nothing changes, right? Like, you're going to keep doing these things. There's some things, factors kick in where, maybe there's a big inflow of, venture capital money, and it's like, okay, the use of proceeds is we're going to really, amp up marketing. So we're going to bring in a CMO, we're going to do these things or whatever. And so sometimes they happen, I guess maybe, just again, a growth scenario versus, like, you're just not cutting it. If there's no one else, you kind of look around as like, who's going to run marketing? Well, you, right. But eventually, you're going to bring in the experts because if that's not necessarily your lane, if you will. And so I think it's just really, you have to be open to the concept, and you also have to know that it's going to come as a positive cost to growth.
Okay. I love that. I love that you and that's Bob Berg was on here and he was talking about that. When I'm out speaking, then who's back here in the business and can I hire somebody? So it's this tension going on. Now, you talk a lot about the CMO, the marketing position, and I'm a publisher too. And I always tell people, anybody can write a book. Okay. My dogs have written books. Okay. But it's marketing. Anybody, you can publish a bestseller on Amazon tonight, but who markets it? So when you say marketing and CMO, is that primarily because you're starting up and scaling, that this is the one piece you really need, or is that, or would you say that's everybody really? That marketing piece is who comes in to scale it and to make it grow.
Yeah. So the original reference point there was that I was overseeing sales, business development, and marketing.
Okay.
And my lane was business development and
okay.
sales, but eventually I would strip that off. It's like the analogy of if someone is like the CTO and on the technical side, they might do product management
Okay.
and do other things, but eventually you got to bring in the team to do that and just, again, stay in your lane.
Got it. Awesome. Okay. Thank you for clarifying on that. So I love how you talked about singleness and the entrepreneur as the creator, as you've got to keep creating, but there's things that then are going to, have roots and go off on their own, and you're on to the next thing. So I love that insight. The next thing he talked about was weariness, and, you have this vision, you're putting everything in. And as you said, there's times you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. But how do you handle doing everything you do? You must run at a pretty intense pace. How do you stay replenished, refreshed? And you talked a little bit about, realizing the value of your time, but share with me how you really overcame some weariness, or a time when weariness almost overcame you.
Yeah, weariness and obstacles, I guess. When I hear weariness, I think of obstacles are things that weigh on you and that just, slow you down. And so I think one of the things that I've lived by is, and I learned, this is a learned thing for me, but you've got to be able to you got to figure out how to tackle those obstacles, right? And so we often will walk into the office in the morning and we'll write on the top of a piece of paper the obstacle, and then we'll put a little box next to it, and we hope we check it, by the end of the day, and we don't. And do we write it the next day? We write it again, or and so we just sort of avoid it, and so we have to go seek counsel around these obstacles.
Okay.
You're not the first one who's had the obstacle. Many have had it before. Who's succeeded at knocking it down? Who's failed at knocking it down? And what did they do to fail doing it? How did someone break it up into smaller pieces to chip away at it? Because you've got to develop the muscle memory to knock down that obstacle, because sitting behind it is a bigger one. And you've got to knock that one down. And guess what? Behind that, a bigger one. Because as you're advancing this business, these things are going to happen, and they drag you down. You just get deflated, or they weigh on you so much. And I would say a lot of startups end up failing, or they quit, throw in the towel, because they couldn't handle the obstacles that were in front of them. And so I've just developed a way to I find humor in everything in life.
Okay.
Sometimes not so appropriate, but I find, sitting at a funeral and getting everyone laughing. But I think it's important to talk about the happy times with someone and laugh it off, and so the endorphins of laughing, just will give you the extra energy to tackle it. And so I've had times where I find that obstacles were always, when there's a weariness period of time, there's something weighing on me that sort of that would bring me down. That's kind of just, I sort of put those together a little bit just because that's just been from my experience. And I just became really good at knocking down those obstacles so we can move forward instead of being in a stuck point or have fear or stress or other things kind of come into play there. And
Right.
just figure out how to advance.
Well, yeah. And I mean, not doing anything, just complaining about it is the worst possible thing that you can do. You know,
that's all many people live there. They just want to just complain about it.
Right. Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
one of the other things, Alec, was one of my dad's he says there's 3 therapies in life: people, music, and laughter. I mean, he had his heart broken, man. I mean, he was so jubilant, but he'd get you laughing. I mean, I can remember him doing funerals and having people laughing because it was like, it's a celebration. And what are we going to do? Cry forever? I lost my mom about, 8 months ago. And that's the last thing she said to me. She's like, don't dwell, get back in there. I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Just gotta keep on going. So I love that. And so you really recommend too, the humor, just keeping the big picture, but also like kind of chunking it down into things. And would you do that when you listed the obstacle? Would you then kind of tease it out or unpack it as a team?
Well, again, in seeking counsel, like, it may be the first time you're experiencing it, but it's not for others. So you'll learn from others.
Yeah.
How did they break it down? Or like, I've got it down now to where I can figure that out. But initially I would seek counsel to talk to, so I could learn from others. How do they knock it down? And oftentimes breaking it up into smaller pieces and learn from others. And don't sit there and think like, why me? This has only happened to me. Believe me, go ask any other entrepreneur. And if anyone's gone all the way through the stages of through growth and exit, they've seen them all. So you're not the first one, and you're not going to be the last one.
Right. And people have been through far, far worse than this. And that's why we encourage people to read books, because you're going to see, I know it's tough, but what makes it so much more palatable is that I know people way more successful than me went through much, much deeper stuff. And then, as you said, now when you encounter these obstacles because of your experience, you hone your set of experiences and skills that okay, I've encountered something that kind of looks like this. And so you've got your arsenal of resources to just, start tearing it down. I love it.
Yeah. And just know it's coming and laugh it off when it does. It's like, what do you mean we can't make payroll Friday? like now that's funny. Yeah.
I love you. No, but I love you said that, because you know what? We're out here. Whenever I hear somebody complain about the man or whatever, I'm like, you've never had to make a payroll, have you? You have never had to say. It's a whole different world out there. So I don't complain about the man anymore, because I know what it's like to be out there trying to make it all come together. So
exactly.
All right. Okay, so next he talked loneliness, weariness. The next thing he talked about was abandonment. And my father would tell people, we need to stop thinking about what we like and want to think about in favor of what we need and ought to think about. And he also hit on your part about the wise counsel, finding the people, not the echo chamber or the ones that are going to say, oh, Alec, you're so brilliant. You can't find a way out, but nobody could. Find the people that tell you what you need to hear. So what does abandonment mean for you as a startup expert? And how would you encourage people out there what to abandon and get clarity?
Yeah. So I don't know, just a lot of thoughts kind of come into mind, but I think one of the hard things is that, as the stresses of starting something and growing something, and you're in your lane and you're working on that, the challenges don't go away. They get bigger. And so I think one of the first things that come to mind is that you should be part of a peer group. Like, go find some others that are in your same position. You could find, go get 4, 5, 6, 10, some group that you could be meeting on a regular basis, that you could be open and honest with each other. You're not in your work setting with your management and others. You're going to be with your peers, where you could go through and problem solve and strategy sessions with others who've either just been through it, or guess what, now it hit and they're going through it now, or so I think seeking counsel and creating a peer group, because it can be very lonely, and oftentimes you could be sitting there like thinking, how am I going to get this done?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, that's the first thing that comes to mind for me, is to just put a group together of your peers that you could meet on a regular basis and have as a sounding board. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then they can speak into you things that you may not be able to see because you're so up close in it.
Right. And that's, yeah. So, and the looking at 10,000 feet, everyone's like, oh, well, just step out and look at it from a 10,000 foot perspective. It's really hard when you're in the weeds of it. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
and so this, if you go and seek, sort of have this peer group that you can be talking to, then they'll give you perspective.
Okay.
And experience. Yeah.
And Alec, do you have that? I mean, there's tons of these, like I was in Vistage for a while, there's all these CEO groups. Can it be something that's less formalized, or who are yours right now? And not necessarily names, but do you meet regularly? Are you kind of on an on-call, check in every now and then? How do you do it at your level?
Yeah. So and all of like CEO space, if you were familiar with, unfortunately, the passing of Bernie Dorman last week, but just an amazing man, and created an amazing thing, like, of a network, and membership group that just help each other as a group raise the water level of everyone. So I'm on faculty there. And so I get to experience, just recently experienced about a month ago, one of their virtual summits for their members. And so, it's just, those groups are great. And ones that are really interactive, like CEO Space does an amazing job of making sure everyone in a summit knows everyone else, and they figure out how to help each other. And it's not just showing up and walking around the tables of a ballroom to try to meet people.
Right.
It's more formal. So I think it's really important. Those are important, and I think they're great learnings. And there's also not only just from the speakers, but also from the other attendees. And then there's potential, opportunity that's formally creating opportunity for everyone.
Right.
So that aspect of it. From my perspective, I have a group, sort of a peer group, that I talk to on a regular basis. I also have, I'm the go-to for many as well, that will come to me, just from some of the past sort of experiences that we've had. So I do a fair amount, I spend a fair amount of my time seeking counsel of others and then providing it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Excellent. And I love that, the peer group is, a lot of times we get in that because you want to network, because it's good to support each other with business, but also I love that you're learning together, and that's why people to go to conferences, not just to kind of good food, or in the old days, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, a great learning opportunity to go to together. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the funny thing is, most people go and just figure, if I just sit in the seat and I listen to those speakers, I'm going to get my aha moment, and I'll go back to my, to my day to day, and all my problems will go away. And so I would say that there's a lot more to what a conference provides.
Yeah.
So one of my, and this, I learned this a long time ago. I used to speak at a lot of stages, and I would see the other keynotes and stuff, for many years I've been doing this, but I would want to go talk to one of the other keynotes. And if I wasn't in the green room with them, you'd never get an opportunity. They get whisked away, or they come in and speak and they leave and they go fly off to the next event. And so I said, if I get asked to keynote, I will be the first one to arrive and the last one to leave, and I'll be present for all the other talks, because I like to hear what other ones are saying, and then I'll weave to my talk some of what I've heard from the prior speakers, and so I think the thing that's interesting. So here I sit in this room for a 3-day conference, let's say, and I could count like less than 10% of the people, and that I'd be introduced, from stage, the other speakers, like, and Alec is here, and the host, everyone's like telling who and less than 10% of the folks in the room will come up to me. And I think, what a missed opportunity. I'm here. I'm making myself available. I'm here to answer any questions, help you in any way. And yet nobody, most people don't take advantage of that. So it's one thing to show up, it's another to be present and to participate.
I love that. I thank you for being so authentic with that, because people that are out there, whether they're speakers or teachers or trainers, I mean, you can look out and you can see who's engaged and who's not. And when you offer, hey, I'll give stuff. If you just read this one book, your whole life will change. But people they just don't take the opportunity. So, and that's not an indictment on society. That's a reality. And I really appreciate you saying that, because if there are leaders out there growing their business, and they may be like, I'm supposed to do this because I'm not getting, 75% of the people engaged and, doing a standing ovation. It's just, it's just what part of the population is really ready to absorb and apply what they're hearing from you.
Right. But so the other thing that you kind of reading into what you just said. So go to the conference, you take all these notes, you've learned a lot and you're inspired and whatever, and you go back to the hamster wheel of your day to day and it's all out the window.
Right.
Right. So the last part of all of this is taking action. And so somebody who's learned all this and then going back, what are they going to just stop and even if it's just 4 hours a week of innovation think time, where I'm just going to not focus on the day to day and I'm just going to sit here and think about how do we go to the next level, or what's the challenge we want to tackle next, or what's our vision, and are we leaning into it every day? And so I think we just get caught up in the day to day. So leaders need to invest in themselves and participate in a variety of these things. They can get it on their own with podcasts and virtual summits and also books and what have you. They can attend and be present, get out of the day to day. Everyone says, I don't have time. I got to run this business. Well, make the time, because a lot of the answers to how to go to the next level are usually going to be found with these other activities, not sitting in your office working every day.
Right. Right. And I love that you brought up, for those of you, if you go to a conference or you're listening online, do send Alec a note. Okay. Do send me because a lot of times, I don't know if sometimes people don't realize, yes, sometimes speakers get whisked in and they whisk right away because of their schedule. But then for people that hang out, do take advantage of that. Send them a note, send them an email, ask them a question, because the thing about great leaders is they are always wanting to share their leadership with people that want it. And so, you were talking about all those questions and answers on your last one. I mean, that's a great sign of that. But it doesn't always, I don't think, I was a very passive listener growing up as a younger leader. And then I realized, oh no, I need to get in there and be very engaged. It's like sitting in church. You can sit there and zone out, but if you give me a bulletin, I'm going to have 15, you know what I'm saying? Because otherwise, why show up if you're not going to really engage and be active about it and then go home and apply it?
Right. And the other thing, I just love to see the ones that attend, but they're out in the hallway on the phone, or they're outside of the conference center on the phone. And it's like, I got it the day to day. Like you got to just find so a good leader has people who can run the business when they step away.
Yes. I love that.
You hire your replacement, right? Your replacement. And a lot of people don't. And so you need to be able to stop and invest in yourself and invest in the business strategically and know that someone's going to be able to manage it tactically.
Well, that ties full circle back to abandonment. When you're in there, abandon everything else. That just, your mind is a vacuum and you got to push everything out that's not supposed to be there to allow leadership teachings from you or whoever else to come into it, or that aha moment. If you're juggling all your tactical stuff, or worrying about what's going on back at the ranch while the cat's away, if the mice are, it's just not going to happen.
Right. And how many leaders will go to a conference, 3-day conference, sit through all the presentations, and come back and present to the company or to the management, or like their learnings? What were the aha moments? What were the takeaways? They just come back, say, conference was great. Had a great time. Heard a couple of great speakers. My favorite was this. But they're not taking advantage of really being present, capturing all of this, and then seeing how it applies to their business, and then coming back and sharing that. Right. It's almost like undercover boss, right?
Uh-huh.
Like when the boss goes out, and into the day to day out in the amongst the people, and seeing and learning and hearing all these things, gets that aha moment. Well, think about like all the learnings that you just got, that you come back and you share that with the management team and say, or whoever the audience, and say, I've looking at things from a different perspective.
Right.
And I want to share some of those ideas with you.
Right. And you, as a leader, you're casting, and we'll get to the next one, which is vision, your view of a better future. So hopefully at that conference, you got at least something. That's why I tell people, just read a book. I mean, even if you just get one good thing out of it, it's still one good thing. You know what I'm saying? So he talks about vision, not as some like Nostradamus or, Galileo or, whatever, but just really seeing what needs to be done and then doing it. because you have to put the integration and the execution part of it. So what does vision mean for you, and how do you, as somebody that just goes from a great idea and then makes it happen and then goes to the next one, how do you morph or scale, or how do you stay on point with your vision, Alec?
Yeah. So I think if we have a vision conversation, we have to have a mission conversation. So the mission and the vision, right? Because one is what you're going to sort of be doing day to day that's going to drive toward this big vision that's sitting out there.
Okay.
So I like thinking big and having this big vision that's sitting out there. But I always challenge to what is everyone doing today to get us to that vision? And what are we celebrating today? Celebrating all the small wins today that are chipping away, getting us toward that vision. And if someone's working on something that's not really kind of leaning in toward that vision, then raise your hand and make it so that everybody has a voice. Because if you go around the company, no matter, it could be as the person who's taking the calls into the company, as like the administrator or someone working the front desk, or all the way through to all the people on the support calls or sales calls or marketing or development or whatever it may be, finance. Everyone's working on something, and and I think when you set that vision, it has to be a shared vision. It can't be that like the management team came up with a vision and tells everyone, hey, here's our vision. Like everyone has to be bought in, like working through figuring out what that vision is. So there's a vested interest to want to achieve it. And so that's, that to me is a really important thing in culture, to make sure that the mission and the vision is set, and then you take those and you move them down into bite-sized, key performance indicators and goals and measurement and so you work through that, and then you celebrate the things that are being achieved that are getting us toward that. And I think we just have this thing that's set out there for 3 to 5 years, and we don't tie back what we're doing today toward it.
Right. And that's kind of, you talked about those obstacles, the barriers, but the celebrations, the bragging. I mean, that is so important, because otherwise people just, and you're probably, have a very strong work ethic, but we also need to really kind of stop and land on the celebrating the success that we are achieving the vision. And that's something that I have gotten much better with at age, because before I'm like, hey, I'm not retired yet. We just got to keep pressing on every single day.
Right. Yeah, but I think for if everyone's bought into the vision, and whatever the small thing that someone does that is advancing, you got to celebrate it. So celebrate the small and large wins. And I think most of the time we just don't even stop to do that. We just think about when we hit this big milestone, then we'll celebrate. But what about all the small ones that got you there?
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. And boy, that really helps get buy-in for the mission too, when people see it all coming together. Because otherwise, a lot of people are like, oh, well, maybe we'll get there. I love that. Thanks so much, Alex. Well, Alec, anything else for our leaders? Just sharing with them leadership lessons on what it took you to pay the price of leadership to get to these successes that you haven't touched on, that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe I sort of alluded to it, but price of leadership is, when I talk about title agnostic and what have you, the willingness to step away, like, put pride aside, put ego aside, put everything aside, and even in the earliest days when it makes sense. So, Constant Contact, 17, 18 months into it, we brought in an amazing CEO who stayed with us all the way through IPO into acquisition. And so we just make room for the right people to come into those certain positions. Okay. And so when we were starting, we had a conversation, the initial 3, and then, a few even after that, about being title agnostic. And it doesn't matter what our titles are. We just gotta all chip in and do whatever it takes to make this thing successful. And that's wearing different hats at times. And, sometimes you can't stay in your lane because so much is needed. But eventually when you start to fill in with the right people to be in that lane, then you go back to what your core lane should be. So I think, just the willingness to be able to bring others in, doesn't matter levels, doesn't matter who's where. I've had so many conversations with somebody starting things like, well, I don't want between you and I don't want anyone to come between us. Like, I don't want to report to someone else. I don't want this. I don't want that. It's like, you can't predict, it's guarantee that you will have someone, it could be many layers between.
Right.
Like this kind of, if this is going to evolve and this is part of growth, we all have
Right.
to be willing to accept that. And many people are not. They want to, some people just want to say they're an entrepreneur. Like I have some folks in my life that have started something and have yet to bring it to market because they just want to say I'm an entrepreneur. Others, like it's around execution. And so sometimes execution requires, some things that are uncomfortable, lonely, all the things we've talked about. And you've got to make room for those things for growth.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take you to find the right people? Because I think that's that's something I know with me with scaling it. I mean, because I'm an operations person inherently, so I can always figure out the process. But without the right people, you said you knew when you came in and saw that CEO. How long had you been looking, and how did you know?
Yeah. So I mean, some of these things are I mean, there's the art and the science of hiring the right people, and
Mm-hmm.
we all, sometimes what you see on the surface is not exactly what you get, and
Mm-hmm.
so, things happen. But for the most part, I think culture, the conversation has to have culture in the mix.
Right.
So does someone fit the culture? And so it's at all levels. And if I just meet someone and they're good people and they're fun to be around and there's just a casual conversation and you could tell that they care and that they're passionate about either what we're doing or our target market, and there's all these things you'd say, okay, there's a good fit here. And then of course you do the formality stuff to check references and everything else. But it's again, some of these things happen episodically around raise a bunch of money, and maybe they'll want someone to come in at a certain level, or growth requires that we bring in some other key management folks to really amp up the stuff we're doing. With the money we just got, we're going to spend it in marketing. We need a CMO. We need someone a CTO, or we need to now bring in a product manager to take that off the plate of this, the CTO or head of engineering. Mm-hmm. And so those things happen just through the evolution of the business.
I love it.
Finding the right people. In some of the companies we have multiple people interview them, and some aren't even in the area of responsibility. Mm-hmm. So Constant Contact, they asked me to do a lot of interviews. If I was in town, people coming in for interviews, I just go in and chat and say, listen, I have no say on whether you get this job or not. I just here to, if you, tell you anything you want to hear, anything about the founding story, or you want, to just talk about, anything around the company. I'm just mm-hmm. here, and I had a set of questions I wanted to ask, but I want to see where they would want to bring the conversation. And so oftentimes I was just looking for culture fit and would they be a good sort of, person to join on on the team. And again, not even in an area I'd ever touched day by day. Mm-hmm. It'd be funny where I talked to somebody and our focus was very small business. The small businesses on Main Street at Constant Contact, plus a few other companies. And I remember I'll ask someone, so where, what town do you live in? Do you go onto Main Street and shop? And they're like, no, I buy everything on Amazon. And I'm like, okay, so obviously a little adverse to going into small businesses, doesn't want to stay local, and that's what we do.
Very smart. I like that. Yeah.
I think there has to be in the mix.
Okay.
It has to be in the mix for you, for
in the mix. I love it.
Seeing the culture fit, and it's like you go to a networking event or a social event, and you're like, you meet someone, you're like, I feel like I've known you, forever. Which we're experiencing here.
Yeah.
And so then you're like, okay, this is like, it's comfortable and I could spend time with this person and get to know them, and someday we'll work together or whatever it may be. And mm-hmm. and so when you feel that, it's right.
Yeah.
Rush and check a box and hire somebody and feel the pressure. The board wants us to hire somebody.
We've all been there. Oh yeah.
And then you rush it and you make a mistake.
Right.
Mistakes are too costly.
Yeah. Hey, and I'm watching the time, but I want to ask you one other thing, because you're the first person that we've had on here that is really in the front end, the startup and the VC. Okay. So I think I know how you're going to answer, but with what's going on with the world, with finances, with everything going on, can you just give us some words as far as how you see the landscape and has anything changed? Has it gotten better? I mean, there's different challenges, but can you share your insights on what you would recommend to leaders out there that are going more the entrepreneurial, pure startup, raising capital route?
Yeah. Listen, the larger funds, and some are still closing large rounds. Like the money is there.
It
Uh,
is.
I
Good.
think
Yeah.
this last quarter, I think, so in Boston or the East Coast, Massachusetts anyway, we had more money going into venture than we did the prior quarter, I think.
Mhm.
So everyone's, all concerned, but I think, the funds are there, and there's no time like the present. And if someone's starting something, they should just be bringing it forward.
I love it.
People have time to take the meetings, and there's the opportunities there for someone to take the business to the next level.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm involved in something that we're bringing to market and going out to raising funds and stocks and IPOs. So I'm more in tune with it now, but that's the same thing now. There's no better time to do it. And I
Right.
think entrepreneurs intrinsically look at when everybody else says no, that's a good time to say yes. So thank you for echoing that. What do I know? I'm new to the whole thing. I'm an optimist I'm a cautious optimist, but it's good to hear that I do still see a lot of money and a ton of money and stuff being poured in. And that's good to hear that that's just not my gut.
There'll be more. There'll be more coming. I mean,
Good.
you're behind when we have these kind of issues, market conditions. They're always, coming out. We come out stronger.
Good.
So anyone who says, "Well, I don't know if it's a good time," or what, they're all excuses.
I love it.
If you have an idea and you're bringing it forward now, so now's the time to be reaching out into your network and running your idea by others who may get involved with you and work with it. Also go out to your target market. Everyone has a little more time now. You have your strategic partners,
Perfect.
yes. Mentors, yes. Possible investors. Everyone has a little bit more time,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're willing to take the Zoom call now and have a chat. And you have to be smart about when you're going out to raise money, because you don't want to go out like everyone hears, like, oh, I'm a limited partner venture fund. Oh, can I pitch my idea? They haven't done their research to know, am I in the space? Have I done stuff similar?
Right.
If not me, someone else that's in the firm. Like, you got to do your homework to make sure you're aligned. Because what happens is, like, someone goes out and just talks to a bunch of people about money, and then they all say no, that's not really in our sweet spot, or that's not really my area of expertise, or whatever the reason. And so then you get to someone who ultimately is like perfect for you, and they'll say, hey, have you talked to others? Yeah, we've had 6 to 8 venture meetings so far. Like, great. Has anyone invested yet? No. Then they see a red flag, like there's a problem. What's the problem? The problem is you weren't smart about going to the right people to begin with.
Right.
That said, you might have someone who's in venture, who's not necessarily the right fit for an investment, and you ask for an informational meeting. Like, could I meet you and run my idea by you and get feedback? So now you haven't put them in the category, I pitched them for money and they said no. I pitched them to get their feedback.
Absolutely.
That's different. And so I raised first round of money with one of my companies, going to someone that I just asked to go and go and present and get feedback. And they said, I love the idea. We want to give you money. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't go in. That wasn't an expectation. Wasn't really sure if there was a fit there, but I knew they've done really well, and I wanted to get their input. And they said, we like it. We like you, and we like it. We want to give you money.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because somebody called me, was talking about books for their grandkids. They knew my dad, they read books. And I said, well, what are you doing now? And they said, well, we're doing this startup for this. And I'm like, that sounds fascinating. I went in on that. And so we're hosting an investor dinner up here in South Central PA. You just don't know. And I mean, I didn't plan on that, but you don't know. And then I'm bringing my friends in to just kind of, just see. And I love that you said that. It doesn't have to be a full on pitch, but doing your homework too, going to your core target audience and asking them, hey, and I'm a publisher. People that come with me with a romance novel, I'm like, this is not what we publish, or werewolves, not what we publish, So do your homework. I love that, Alec. Well, Alec, where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so best thing is my website, which is alecspeaks.com, ALEC speaks, SPEAKS.com. And also there's a blog post on finding the right investor. So some of the stuff I just mentioned, there's a few new blog posts I've just started putting out on these.
Excellent. Well, I need to pull them up, because I'm going to be in that zone here in a couple months coming up. So thank you, Alex, so much for all the insights on what you shared with how you pay the price of leadership. I appreciate your transparency and all the great tips I know our listeners got, and I know I personally got.
Super. And I appreciate it, Tracy.
You're welcome. Okay, to our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure and hit the subscribe button. Give us the honor of a rating. Reach out to Alec because he wants to hear from you, and have a tremendous day.
Thank you for listening to Tremendous Leadership with Dr. Tracy Jones. Find out more about Dr. Jones at www.tremendousleadership.com. If you've been ignited by something you heard in this episode, let us know by leaving a review for Tremendous Leadership wherever you listen to podcasts, or by sending us a message through www.tremendousleadership.com.